no new equipment from the Chinese firm Huawei can be used in the UK's new 5G mobile network after 2021. That is the announcement expected from ministers tomorrow. They'll also insist that all existing Huawei 5G kit must be removed later. There's been pressure from the United States and from some Conservative MPs for Huawei to be ditched because of claims that the Chinese firm poses a threat to national security. Huawei says there's no basis for that allegation. Telecoms firm BT warned today that it would take a decade to remove Huawei from the UK's telecoms infrastructure. Our security correspondent Gordon Carrera has more details.
In the new Cold War between the US and China, 5G is the battleground and the UK is on the front line. And that means a decision about Huawei made just in January now looks set to be overturned. 5G will power our future, from self-driving cars to smart homes, and that means who builds it matters, according to the top US diplomat leading the campaign against Huawei.
It's going to have so much more of our personal data. Therefore, we must have the highest levels of trust in the vendors providing that infrastructure. And they cannot be vendors who are headquartered in countries where they're under the control or direction of authoritarian regimes.
Since January, Washington has ramped up the pressure. New sanctions in May restricted access to US technology. That led the UK spies to say they no longer could provide the same assurances about Huawei's equipment. In turn, that's given the government an opportunity to shift position as attitudes have hardened. The coronavirus crisis led to fears of dependency on China, while events in Hong Kong increased concerns that Beijing is heading in a more authoritarian direction. That's all fueled a rebellion by Conservative backbenchers who want a harder line.
There's no point in taking back control from Brussels, only to hand it over to Beijing. So we've realised very early on that what we're dealing with here is not a usual state partner, but a state instead that is willing to use all means of control to leverage influence.
5G is already rolling out in cities and soon across the country. Back in January, the government said Huawei could build up to 35% of the network. But tomorrow it's expected to set a new target, 0, Huawei's eventual removal. But timings matter. A long time frame of, say, 7 to 10 years might be easier to manage, but leave critics unhappy. A shorter time frame of 3 to 5 years might make critics happier, but lead to much more disruption. Huawei is already in mobile masts like this one. Ripping it out fast could affect existing signals, as well as delaying 5G rollout.
That gets pushed back maybe by as much as 2 years in terms of that rollout and availability of the 5G network. But it also impacts consumers in terms of 4G and the experience that they have there, because the current version of 5G that we're deploying depends on the 4G network.
Tomorrow's shift may have significant consequences for economic growth, national security and international relations. But it also may not be the end of the battle.
And Gordon's with me now. Gordon, here's the question that lots of people have been asking today. If getting Huawei out of this infrastructure might take as long as 10 years, is this policy change going to be enough to satisfy all of the critics?
I think the simple answer is no. I think timing really matters on this. I mean, 6 months ago, the government thought it had made a decision, but it's been pulled apart and reopened now under intense pressure, more pressure than there was last time. And you've got Washington looking for a fast removal of Huawei. You've got Conservative backbench critics wanting a fast removal. But then you've got the government thinking, well, this could have implications for the rollout of gigabit broadband, of increased connectivity, of trying to stimulate economic growth. They're worried about that. They're also, frankly, looking at what China might do in retaliation. So on that basis, they're likely to look for some kind of compromise. But if the time frame is too long, I've spoken to Conservative backbenchers tonight who say they're worried it might be too long. It might be 7 years. If it is, they are going to oppose it, including when the legislation comes back in autumn. And so that means that this battle may not be over and we may see this reopened all over again.
OK, Gordon. Thanks again. Gordon Carrera, our security correspondent.